Need that little woman, like the test card, showing my age. Okay, start completely again.
Please.
Okay, everyone. Welcome, everyone. I'm Councillor Susie Horton, Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education. Please be assured that we have put appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that this meeting is undertaken in a COVID-secure manner. Limited public seating has been made available, allocated in such a way that all present are aware of the COVID-secure protocols. This meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to view remotely if they wish. Please be advised that the public seating area is not in view of the camera. Can I please ask members to remain seated throughout the duration of the meeting and to wear a face covering unless seated. A little bit of housekeeping, safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Don't attempt to use the lifts and assemble at the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street past the University's Park building. In order to comply with the Guildhall's Trust's fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed and everyone speaking will be on camera. Members of the press and public are permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. Okay. So, item 1 is apologies for absence. Do we have a... do we do introductions? That's all right, we don't need to do introductions. Apologies for absence is Councillor Jeanette Smith, who has some work commitments that have come up in an unexpected timing. Any other apologies? No other apologies. So, we have declarations of members' interests. So my usual declaration is that I am Vice Chair Governors at Craneswater Junior School. For the sake of the live streaming, is it all right if we go around and introduce ourselves?
Sarah Daly, Deputy Director, Children and Families.
Debbie Anderson, Head of School Improvement and Early Years.
Mike Stoneman, Deputy Director, Education.
Angela Mann, Finance Manager for Children, Families and Education.
James Harris, Senior Local Democracy Officer.
Okay, and that's it at the moment. Okay, so we'll go straight on to item 3, which is Living Difference for the agreed syllabus for religious education in Portsmouth. And I'll hand over to Debbie.
Thank you. The local authority has statutory responsibilities with regard to religious education. Religious education has a distinctive place as part of the basic curriculum alongside the national curriculum. It has to have equal standing in relation to the core and foundation subjects within schools. However, it differs from the subjects of the national curriculum only in that it is not subject to national prescription. It is a matter for the agreed syllabus conferences to recommend locally prescribed procedures for the local authority. Each local authority by law must establish a permanent body called a SACRE, Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education. It must also establish an occasional body called an Agreed Syllabus Conference, ASC, to review the agreed syllabus for RE, religious education, adopted by the local authority. This may have common membership with the SACRE, but is a separate entity and must therefore be separately convened. The agreed religious education syllabus must be reviewed once every 5 years. Living Difference was introduced in 2004 as the locally agreed syllabus and has been through a number of reviews and iterations since then. The latest review started in autumn 2019 and has included consultation with teachers, schools, SACREs from Portsmouth, Southampton, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, finalising with the agreed syllabus conference in November 2021, which voted to recommend the adoption of Living Difference 4. Living Difference 4 has a clear purpose statement, clear process for teaching religious education, a clear explanation of how to make a religious education curriculum, clear advice to teachers on how to ensure children progress over time in their religious education, a foreword that confirms our commitment to an education that takes seriously the importance of children and young people exploring their own lives in relation to what it can mean to live a religious life and other ways of life, including those informed by a non-religious perspective. Distinctive features of Living Difference 4, and where it varies from its predecessor, are the front cover has waves and the back a spiral to represent progression and the spiral curriculum approach. The cycle of inquiry remains an open investigation, but now the third key step is inquire rather than enquire, as this is intended to be much more specific with a focus on something distinct to find out. It takes into account new legislation, for example, the new early years foundation stage curriculum. It has better coherence and progression between primary and secondary, Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 3. There are golden thread concepts of community, belonging, special, and love woven through all key stages. It has end-of-year expectations to support teachers in making assessments linked to the purpose statement. It has an articulated position in relation to religion and worldviews. Religion-specific material has been discussed and checked with RE scholars. It also has an option for pondering time, whereby children are given opportunities for independent thinking and learning about concepts studied. Living Difference 4 is to be commended to LA Maintained Schools of Portsmouth Local Authority as it fulfills their statutory duty to teach religious education. But more than that, it provides an approach which is highly supportive of teachers in their planning and pedagogy of a clearly sequenced, progressive and well thought through curriculum which will aid teaching, learning and progress in religious education. Therefore, it is recommended that the Cabinet Member for Education formally adopts the new religious education locally agreed syllabus, Living Difference 4 for Portsmouth.
Thank you so much for that report, Debbie. I'll let Terry introduce himself and then I'll come back to make a couple of comments.
Thank you, and apologies for my lateness. Councillor Terry Norton, Conservative spokesperson. Interests? Yes. Same as usual, really. I work at Mayfield School, albeit employed through an external agency.
Well predicted,
Thank you.
Terry, and welcome. Yes, thank you so much, Debbie. And as you said at the end of that report, that it is a statutory thing that we have to pass through this meeting. But in actual fact, having spent the years that I did on SACRE, I realised that the hard work that actually goes into that group is probably the most well-attended meeting I've ever been to. And it's a lot of debate and thought goes into the level of the curriculum and actually what that curriculum can do when embedded in schools to support other teaching as well. So I think sometimes when things are statutory, we sometimes possibly might think they need to be nodded through, but in actual fact, I'm really pleased that you gave that thorough report, and particularly the stuff around inquiry and inquiry. Probably need that more than ever nowadays in our schools. So I absolutely endorse your comments, and I'm happy to approve that curriculum. Okay, so we go on to the second and final agenda item, which is very different, back to budgets. So I will hand over to Angela to present the Q2 budget monitoring report. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. The report recommends that the Cabinet Member notes the Children, Families and Education portfolio forecast, revenue and capital budget positions and the mitigating actions as at the end of September 2021. The projected outturn is 4.3 million more than the budget, of which 1.9 million relates to COVID-19 expenditure. The majority of the overspend is in the looked after children area, which can be broken into 1.7 million in placements, £1 million pressure in care leavers, and £1 million in unaccompanied asylum seeking minors, care leavers and under 18s. In addition, there is a £200,000 pressure due to strategic posts being covered by temporary arrangements. There's a £100,000 pressure on home to school transport due to additional routes due to COVID. And a further £300,000 of pressure relating to additional social workers and team leaders in response to increased cases due to COVID-19. The report contains the action plan to mitigate the financial pressures, and this involves the use of the Children, Families and Education Portfolio Reserve. There's a weekly review of high-cost placements, ensuring that all eligible young people are in receipt of universal credit. There's a review of the care leaver offer, lobbying of government for additional funding to reflect the increase in statutory responsibility to 25 for care leavers, and lobbying the Home Office for an increase in the grant for unaccompanied asylum seeking minors, care leavers, and also the timely assessment for those care leavers for their right to remain. And finally, the report summarises the capital programme, which is predicted to stay within budget. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Angela. I suppose I just want to say a couple of things, which is, I absolutely appreciate the seriousness of the situation. You don't want to be going into a £4 million overspend. But there are some circumstances that explain it. I mean, COVID is obviously one, and it's not just in terms of the direct COVID spend, it's in terms of the interruption that COVID had on some really good and successful strategies that were working. But also it's the long tail of COVID and the interruption it gave to, as it were, business as usual. So I think there are explanations, however, that doesn't change the situation. As Angela outlined, there are a whole series of plans to mitigate that overspend, and we're pursuing them with great rigour. I don't know if Sarah wants to add anything at this point or wait for questions.
I would like to reiterate what you've said, Susie. We take this budget position seriously. Clearly, as you've already stated, the long tail of COVID and the ongoing impact has been significant on all children within our service and beyond. Impact on mental health and antisocial behaviours and complexity of cases coming into the system. There's been the impact on our savings plans and our ability to really see the impact of the innovation work that has been supported in the city. We've seen impact on market and placement provision, with the ability nationally of children to step down and move on from those placements, causing a real shortage within the system and a challenge for us in terms of identification of placements, but also in the ongoing cost of placements as the market becomes increasingly profit-driven.
Thank you, Sarah. Terry?
Questions? Yeah, I mean, the first one for me, if possible, is about homeschool transport. It's, ever since I've sat on this portfolio, it's been a contentious issue. What are we looking at to reduce that? It always seems like something that overspends. Of course, we didn't have homeschool transport running throughout the majority of COVID, so I'm a little bit concerned as to where that overspend is coming from. What are we putting in place? What avenues are we looking at to ensure that we don't have this as just something that we bag every single year?
I'll bring Mike in a minute, but my understanding is that in actual fact, during some parts of the pandemic, it was actually, we weren't overspent, but unfortunately when schools went back with bubbles and things, it was all the usual problems plus more, but I'll let Mike explain.
Yeah, and just to say that you're right, in fact, during the pandemic, we were significantly underspent because of the fact we weren't providing homeschool transport in a number of months. And actually, before the pandemic, we had actually got the budget under control, so we're in a much better position. At the moment, the overspend is there because we are still putting in place the arrangements we had previously, so we've got more routes running because of issues around social distancing and trying to keep the children in their bubbles. And we are continuing with that, which means that there is a pressure. If we didn't have that, then I think the budget would be pretty much where we would want it to be. Having said that, we have got in place a number of measures we're taking to make further savings to reduce the pressure on this budget. So we are implementing some independent travel training with a number of schools at the moment, and that I think will deliver some savings. We're looking to broaden the transport operator market and bring in new providers, which will provide more competition and we hope lead to more efficiency. And thirdly, we're looking at developing a partnership with Solent Academies Trust and to use their fleet of minibuses as part of our fleet, which I think will also further reduce costs and reduce the reliance we have on some of the big operators that we currently use, of which there are just two, and this would be helpful in that regard as well. So we are looking at lots of ways in the future of bringing this budget back into a balanced position.
Thank you, Mike. Further question?
Yes, please. And the second one is about, and forgive me if I've got this wrong, it's out-of-area placements. Is that the really expensive one? The out-of-area placements. We've had a brief conversation about, that and how expensive that is. Again, what are we looking at? What guidance have we looked at, or what systems have we looked at from our statutory neighbours to see how they deal with these very expensive places?
Yeah, I think, because I don't think you came to the briefing where we had a paper on that, but I'll let Sarah highlight some of the points that were in that paper.
So actually the challenges for local authorities across the country are the same as we're experiencing here, and we can see that pressure nationally within placements and with the use of external placements as well within the market. What we're doing locally is mirroring some of the behaviours across other authorities. We're now holding weekly reviews of placements, especially those external provision. What we're doing is we're looking to our internal children's homes and seeing those children where we had delay to reunification plans. So the plan was always for those children to return home, but obviously during the pandemic, doing that work with families entering homes was difficult for us. So over the past week, we have agreed reunification plans over the next 3 months for a number of children within our internal children's homes. And within that, we are then planning for those children who are currently at some distance and placed in expensive external residential placements for them to come back into the city, where of course the provision is better. We can wrap around them, we can work with partner agencies, and we are able to look by January of having moved 4 or 5 of those children from those high cost placements outside of the city back in. Obviously we now have the Omicron variant. We are confident, though, that the work we're already doing in those families means that won't further delay for these children who obviously are excited at the prospect of returning to their families. So, yes, we have made significant inroads already, and I think significantly, and we have Angela here, I would like to extend thanks to finance officers within the system for the support that they've extended back into the system to really help us have that closer scrutiny on our budgets at this time.
I think that's it then, if there's no further questions.
One comment disconnected, that's okay.
Yeah, no. Yeah, we're finished with the paper.
With the paper. Just from me to say thank you on behalf of the Conservative group, really, for the news that was in the press recently, re Ofsted and the percentage of schools that are rated good or outstanding. I know that when the Conservative administration took over, I think it was 58%, and they raised that to 86%, and schools, officers, yourself have clearly built on that great work, so credit where credit's due. Thank you for that. Obviously we have a long way to go with attainment, but I think it's good that parents across the city, most of whom can be assured that their child goes to a good or outstanding school. So thank you to all involved.
That is a point I was going to make, so you beat me to it, but that's great. No, that's good. I think, as you say, it's hard work all round, not least in the head teachers and in the schools, and it's just nice to have some positive news. We know that's, we know we've still got to keep going. We know we need to work on standards. We know that we can't ever be complacent, but actually, why don't we just enjoy a bit of good news about schools in our city whilst we can? So thank you very much for that, and thanks to your group for passing that on. Does anyone else want to comment on that, or are you happy just happy, finish on a positive note? In which case, thank you to all the officers for your time and the reports. Thank you for your questions, and I hope everyone has a really nice Christmas break. Thank you.